Yeah, just briefly. There's one really important fact you need to understand.
What?
And the succeeding senior resident inspector is right behind you. Peck's move had nothing to do with that. He's here for a term, and they rotate them. Well, no, let me just finish this. My understanding is he was here for a term, his term was up, and he rotated it. Had nothing to do with that. Any interpretation that thinks that is just simply, as far as I understood it, not correct. Now, the resident inspector is here, and we can ask him. Secondly, all right, this is very important. Peck sent in a non-concurrence about something. A team of staff, significant numbers of them, not one, not two, not three, but a large number of staff met, discussed, and wrote their view. It's something like N, where N is more than 1, to 1. I don't know whether it's 22 to 1 or 4 to 1 or 6 to 1.
Right.
The fact that they didn't agree should carry some weight, shouldn't it? So the statement that he said it and therefore it's right isn't necessarily true, all right?
Right.
Now,
okay.
Third, that IPRP report does not, and I studied it carefully, confirm, quote unquote, your words, Peck's finding. It doesn't. It's different. It's just different. It's an issue worth thinking about hard, but it's not that issue, okay? And thinking that it is, I think, is a misunderstanding, a technical misunderstanding of the issue, okay? Those three things are, at least my, Bob Budnitz's view of the things you said. That doesn't go to the point that IPRP report says something that's important. But I don't see it as related to that other issue. I just don't. Others can disagree, or they can agree, or whatever. Secondly, and this is really very important, and I said this to Giesman when he was here at the last meeting, or maybe it was the one before. I, at least, am not particularly concerned with whether this plant meets the NRC's design basis, because I can't figure out what the NRC's design basis is. I've spent a long time, I said this in public before, I'll say it again. I have no idea what the actual design basis is for this station, because it's really confusing.
You said
it is really, really confusing.
Doesn't that count?
Well, wait. So the NRC has to sort that out, because they're a regulatory agency with legal authority. That's not for us. It counts, but it's not for us. So for me, the others can talk for themselves. I'm just talking about for me, and I said this before. I've looked at the seismic resistance of all the equipment and structures out there, okay? And I've seen the analysis that others have made. And I've convinced myself that whatever that design basis will be, whether it's here, or here, every piece of equipment and every structure out there is strong enough to withstand it, with margin. And that's what counts for me. So whether design, it's as if you didn't know whether the speed limit out here was 20, 30, or 40, but the car's going 8. Okay? If that's true, imagine a road with a sign that says 20, speed limit 20, and right behind it's a 30, and right next to it is a 25, and right next to it is a 36. You didn't know what the speed limit was. But if you're going 8, you're under it. So this is not a small point with me. It's a major point. This is what I do for a living. I have convinced myself that every safety significant structure and every safety significant component at the plant has a seismic capacity strong enough to withstand whatever it is. And I got to tell you, I can't figure out what it is because it's really ambiguous.
So you're saying that every
system, structure, and component at that plant has been evaluated to see what its seismic capacity is.
And it could withstand whatever happened, no matter what.
I didn't say whatever. It can withstand whichever of those design bases turns out to be right. In other words, the strongest of them. All right? Now, I don't know which one is right. I don't know which one is the legally right one. See, because there's a legal thing here. If they violate the license, the NRC can come with that.
It's the 0.4 G ground movement motion,
Well, no, actually, it's been evaluated for 0.75. A spectrum anchored at 0.75 with a spectrum. And some of the spectral accelerations are actually, 1.5 G. I mean, spectral, not PGA. But if that's true, and if what I say is true, because it's what I think, then I'm convinced that the plant is safe enough, even though I don't know what the design basis is legally, because I can't figure it out. And the NRC is having trouble figuring it out too, which is why they're going through this big process to try to straighten it out. But whichever it is, and this is an important point, I at least myself, and that's what I do for a living, have convinced myself of what I said. Now, there are other seismic experts who have looked at this station, and I don't know of any of them that disagree with me.
What about
Right?
the IPRP?
They're talking about the legality of the design basis. And I agree. I don't know what it is. It's complicated. But if you look at the analysis of the structures, look at the analysis of the equipment, look at the test database of shake table tests, look at the various analyses that have been done, and I've studied them, and they're in the public domain, and everybody studied them. Those structures and those components every one, have capacity stronger than whatever that might be. Now, I'm comforted by that. If that weren't true, I'd really be worried. But it turns out it's so. And that analysis was done in 1988 in what's called the Long-Term Seismic Program, and it's been kept up to date and continues to be kept up to date. And that's what makes me comforted. And you should be comforted by what I said, separate from this legality, because I can't figure it out. And I'm not alone. It's really complicated. And you know why it's complicated? Because the design basis changed 4 different times back in the 70s, 80s, kept changing. And different things, concrete was poured to one standard, and then something was stuck in it to another standard, and the thing was a different standard. It's really hard to see
Is
how
the concrete still there that was poured to one standard and then another standard and then a different standard?
Yes, but then you go and evaluate it as it sits, and you find out that it's way stronger than any of it. Why? Because the way it was built had extra margin, which is great.
So we have nothing to worry about.
No. I'm not going to say you have nothing to worry about, but if you're worried about the seismic capacity of that station, you're worrying about the wrong things. There's a lot of things to worry about that we worry about a lot, and that isn't one of them for me because of it. Enough said.
If I may make a
Took too
remark
much time,
in response to Ms. Linda Seeley's effort here, without addressing the merits of your comments, I, for one, am very appreciative of your effort.
Thank you.
Right, what you have done is come before the committee and provide us with some issues of importance to us and to you, and with some rather controversial issues as to Dr. Peck's dissenting opinion on non-concurrence, and also the latest article written by Ms. Rochelle Becker. Yeah, I, for one, appreciate it. I also share your sentiment, with a great deal of deference to Dr. Budnitz as the committee's resident seismic expert, with a great deal of deference, but I do share your sentiment. I am a firm believer of the fact that seismic science is not of sufficient maturity at this point in the nation's history to answer this fundamental question. If you know so much about seismic activity, tell me when and where and how big the next earthquake would be.
Peter Lamb, you're asking the wrong question. We can't tell when and where the next one will be. All we can say is how big it might be and make sure it's bigger than that.
Yes, indeed.
Nobody can say where and when, that's for sure.
As I said, with a great deal of deference to Dr. Budnitz, but I
We just
may
don't know
be
where.
asking the wrong question.
That's
but
a wrong question.
But that is the question, first and foremost, in my mind, for me to personally examine the issue before us. Furthermore, if I may say, Dr. Budnitz is right. There's a lot of fussiness about where is the design criteria for this facility. Now, given it a great deal of latitude, up or down, whatever the magnitude would be, I also happen to believe that this facility has sufficient margin to satisfy the federal design criteria that was developed over so many years. But that may not be the only issue before us, right? It is, were the federal design criteria developed adequately way back when?
That's right.
Now, that is a question for our political leaders and our regulator to address. I think as a member of the public, you had that right to focus on that. However, this committee has no jurisdiction to backfit on existing federal regulation.